Alrighty, guys, it's Q&A time. So I've been putting out some content saying, ask me anything literally. And now it's time for me to answer all your questions. So thank you for posting all of the questions. And as you know, I also promised that I would give a free coaching session to the question or questions that I thought were going to be the most astute and make me think the most as well. So definitely pay attention all the way to the end in case that lucky question is you. And it's also good to see like what other people are asking as well. So just stay tuned for the whole thing and you might learn something along the way. So let's jump into it. All right, so we're going to start with YouTube actually. And I've got a comment here from Naomi Rika, 6341. Her first question says, is it scary? Naomi, I presume that you're talking about real life racing. And so we'll start with that. And I'll say, no, it's not scary because with the speed, you also have the grip. And the grip is your savior, right? The grip makes you feel comfortable. The grip makes you feel confident and the grip allows you to do what we do. Without grip, obviously everything will become scarier, right? So grip is control for us, essentially. So the faster you go, generally with downforce, the more grip you have as well. So it sort of works like that. I wouldn't say scary. I think it would be impossible to drive and be a racing driver driving with that fear. But for sure, you could be more confident or less confident as the grip gets more and less. So, for example, in wet weather, if it's really slippery, for sure your confidence is going to take a bit of a knock. I don't think that it gets to the point of fear and scared. I think that's, next level, and you probably shouldn't be driving if you are scared. So, no, we have plenty of grip. Racing tires are sticky and everything just feels amazing. So, no. All right. The next one comes from Carl Margrogazano, 6231. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Hi, Martin. I have a question regarding the wet weather racing line video from the intermediate course. So the instruction is to avoid the normal racing line due to the combination of settled rubber and water, which removes almost all traction from that part of the track. My question is, if the majority of drivers do the same, especially the experienced drivers, during a race/practice session, wouldn't it mean that this off racing line would also start to become soapy? Thanks. Your course is helping me a lot. Oh, thank you, Carl. I'm happy to hear that. It fills my heart with joy to know that my course is helping you and I'm actually helping people. So thank you for your comment. So your question is, if everyone uses the racing line that's off the rubber, does that eventually rubber in? I guess that's what you're asking. So the answer is no. In the dry, we put rubber down, and in the wet, we clear water. They're essentially the two changes that happen. So in the dry, we put rubber down, and you know that when it rains, that's what gets extremely slippery. And in the wet, we obviously want to avoid that. And the only change that really happens across time on that line is that we clear water. And if you see the track starting to dry up, it will start to dry up in exactly that place first. That makes it even more usable. So that gives you even more grip. And that allows you to switch from wet to dries even sooner. So no, we don't really put rubber down in the wet. If anything, you clear away the water and dry it up. And that's essentially the change that happens. So really good question. And thank you for that one. The next one, also on YouTube, comes from Hawk118. What would you say are the must-have tips and or techniques for racing? Wow, it's a good question, Hawk. It's a very open-ended question. What are the tips and techniques for racing? Because there are so many. Tips and techniques. I think if I'm talking technically, I'd say braking is one of the most important techniques that you'll need to develop. Braking is the control. So all of our control comes from the braking, and the corner starts at the braking phase. So choosing when to brake, how hard to brake, when to come off, how to come off, and how to combine that with the steering is really the braking skill and the braking technique. So that is a must have. and also configuring the brake system. So brake balance, brake bias, brake migration, engine braking, brake shape, brake pressure. All of these tools that you have available in the braking just make it more comfortable during the braking phase. So that's definitely a technique that's a must have. You must be coordinated with your left foot and left foot braking. The only other tip I could give is I'm an early breaker. So it's for me, it's always not worth it to brake late. I like to brake early and have my corner organized so that I can get on the throttle early, and I really prioritize exits. So I do prioritize exits a lot. Exits mean a lot to me. And so if I can find a way to have the corner organized earlier and get on the throttle earlier, I'm happy with that. Even if it means I have to brake slightly earlier to do all that preparation work. So there's a tip as well. I'm an early breaker. Early braking allows you to get good exits, and it's also so much easier to be consistent when you're an early breaker as well. Obviously, it's going to hurt you in qualifying because you're giving up that last bit, but it allows for consistent performances, and you just focus on getting good, clean exits. You're 9 out of 10. You're pretty good with that. So focus on your braking and focus on your exits. So thank you, Hawk. It's a good question. All right, the next one comes from Rick Shiwi. Again, apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly. Rick says, what is the best way to get quick in sim racing apart from obviously driving a lot? I guess understanding, like, yeah, without doing hundreds and thousands of laps, understanding. And that's my role, is to help you shortcut that driving so much. So just giving you understanding. So telling you how things work, what to focus on, what's important, what's not important, shortcutting all of that, just understanding how things work. So how downforce works, how the braking works, why you want to trail brake, why you should take a certain racing line. It just, when it makes sense in your head, obviously you're going to execute on that. So yeah, I spent 20 years driving, so I did it the hard way. And I wanted to make it easier for you guys so that I could help you and answer these questions. So I guess knowledge is the most important one. There is no substitute for practice. You're going to have to do practice at some point, but you can make your practice more efficient by doing such a thing. So every time you go out is a learning experience. You learn about the braking, you learn about the grip level, you learn if you have any issues, you learn about your understeer, oversteer, so the balance. You're learning about your gears and which gear to take the corners in. So every time you go out on track is a learning experience. There's more information coming in. So the next time you go out, you're better prepared. And essentially you just iterate to a faster lap time. So I hope that helps you, Rick. Knowledge is important, and gather all of the information every single time you go out. Don't make the same mistake twice. Cool. Our next question is from the Versatile Gamebox. And he or she says, can sim racers who are older than 18 through 30 achieve the same results as those who are in their 40s and above, also achieving that 1% in lap time? Thank you. So the Versatile Gamebox, thank you for your question. If I understand it correctly, I think what you're saying is, can people who are over 40 compete with people who are 18 through 30? That's probably the first part of your question. And then achieving that 1%, last 1% in lap time. So two-part question. Okay, so the first part of that question regarding the age, absolutely yes. You only need to look at Fernando Alonso on the current grid to know that if you're in your 40s, it's not a problem. Obviously, it would be difficult to start your career from that point. So, you wouldn't want your first Formula One race to be at 32. You know what I mean? It obviously makes it hard to start at that point. But if you've been doing it for a while and you happen to find yourself in your 40s and you have all of the understanding, absolutely not. You're as young as you feel, and you can compete with anyone of any age, provided you feel like you can do it and you still have that fire inside as well. So I mentioned Fernando. Raikkonen was in his 40s. Schumacher got pole position in Monaco in his 40s. So yeah, the answer is absolutely no problem there at all. Just make sure you feel like you want to be doing it and you're comfortable and confident as well. Second part to your question is, also about achieving that final 1% in lap time. That's a good question. Like once you have all of the understanding and knowledge, how do you really squeeze that last part out? And I guess it comes down to putting everything together and driving the perfect lap or as close to the perfect lap as possible. If you look at your sectors across multiple laps, you'll see you have one best sector on lap 1, and then another best sector on lap 10, and then you've done another best sector on lap 19. It's about putting that together. And how do you put that together? Well, you got to focus on the 1% things. If you want to find the 1%, you got to focus on the 1% things. So that's braking at exactly the right moment, timing your upshifts at exactly the right moment, being on all of the right parts of the track at the right moment as well. So it's doing all the 1% things. If you're going in a straight line, making sure you avoid the bumps and take the perfect line, steering as minimal as possible. It's all these little details, unfortunately. We have a technical sport and lap time is infinite, infinitely tiny, like it's so small. So if you're looking for 1%, you just need to do all the details perfect. And just imagine like that a robot was driving or an artificial intelligence was driving. How would they drive? They'd be perfect with their shifts, perfect with their braking, perfect racing line, perfect throttle introduction. Do you know what I mean? Everything is like perfect. They deploy the energy at the right time. Their downshifts are perfectly timed. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be all these things. So we're not robots, but we can aspire to be as close to perfect as possible. So that's how you're going to get the 1% is by looking for those small marginal gains and putting it all together on one lap. Thank you for your question. I hope I answered it. So we're going to move over to a different platform now. We're going to move over to TikTok. And I've got a bunch of questions here on TikTok that I'm going to run through now. So the first one comes from Blechard Argoyo. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. But Blechard says fireproof gloves in case your setup blows up. Yeah. Where are the gloves? Here are the gloves. So I guess these are the gloves that Blechard is referring to. They're OMP X1 Evo fireproof gloves, a very good glove. And Blechard, I've tried other gloves. I've tried cheaper gloves and I've tried like karting gloves, for example, which are about half the price of these ones. And I just put holes in them straight away. Like literally after 2 weeks, they've got holes and we have to sew them back up. And unfortunately, you get what you pay for. So I have fireproof gloves, not for their fireproof functionality, but because they're still in perfect condition, as you can see. So there's nothing wrong with them. And the reel you saw, they're in perfect condition, and I use them so much. So fireproof is just the added benefit you get for having quality as well. So they're a good glove. Highly recommend these gloves. They're not in case my simulator setup blows up. Fingers crossed it doesn't blow up. At least my hands are going to be safe, right? So thank you for your entertaining question. The next one on TikTok comes from Shizm. Why is the wheel so high and the screen so far away? I get this one a lot, actually, particularly with the wheel. Why is the wheel so high? So let's start with that one. So I'm pretty tall and I've actually got it in Formula One-ish position. So it's the center of the wheel is in line with my neck. And when you turn the wheel, your hand comes in front of your face. That's essentially how it is in Formula One. If you just jump on Google and have a look at some images, you'll see, or even the helmet cam that's new these days, you'll see that the steering wheel is pretty much in line with neck level. And when you turn, the hand just comes in front of the face. So it is high, but that's what it is. Obviously in a Formula One cockpit, your feet and your chest are in line with each other and the steering wheel is in front of your face. So it's relatively high. That's how it is. I also prefer it at that height because I use more of my shoulder muscles than I would any other muscles. So if you imagine the wheel was a bit lower, I'd be using more back muscles and I don't like the idea of that. I like it higher so that I can use more of my shoulder to turn as well, and chest, which I think is a better muscle than using your back. You don't want to have your back tight. So it's at a good height for me. And like I say, I'm tall, so it's comfortable for me. If it doesn't work for you, move it down or move it up or play around with it. But yeah, again, I like to have it so that when I turn, my hand comes in front of my face. It's just a realistic experience for me. So that's why the wheel is so high. and the screen is so far away. So I have a 32-inch monitor. I don't feel like it's that far away. It's probably a meter. It's probably a meter away from the steering wheel, if I had to guess. And it's 32-inch, so it's quite big. I'm comfortable with it there. I guess to answer both your questions, I'm comfortable with the wheel height and I'm comfortable with the screen where it is as well. Obviously, there's no right or wrong, so just move them up or down or further out or in as you please. There's no right or wrong. So I have them there because they're comfortable for me there. Okay, next question on TikTok comes from ERT Lucas Dirksen. What are your PC specs? That's a good question, Lucas. I only know a few components off the top of my head. I know that the RAM, because I just upgraded the RAM, it's 64 gig. And I'm not a PC, like I'm not into PCs at all, so I don't know like the lingo, but I know I just upgraded my RAM to 64 gig, and I know my graphics card is 3060. That's pretty much all I know. I don't know the motherboard. I don't know the CPU. But hey, listen, if you send me an email, I can send you the full, like the full inventory, like the invoice pretty much from the guys that built it. It's been good. It's been reliable for me. So yeah, look, drop me an email and I'll give you a full parts list if you're interested. So martin@lowerlaptime.com. Okay, next question on TikTok comes from Pepe Slotboom. What is the best steering wheel into dad? 100 euros. So I guess what is the best steering wheel within 100 euros? You probably don't have heaps of choice at that budget. Probably the Thrustmaster would be your only choice, or a version of Thrustmaster. I started driving with a keyboard. So A was accelerate, Z was brake, and the arrows left and right was left and right. I started driving on that when I was about 12 or 13. So then eventually moved to, Thrustmaster or Logitech wheel. I had 2 Logitech wheels, and then this is my 4th wheel. So, I mean, just get something to start. Yeah. Like for 100 euros, like I say, you might not have heaps of choice, but I don't think it's too important when you're starting. You don't need the best equipment. It's not going to make you any faster. Go with that, learn with that. And as time progresses, you'll naturally upgrade when you're ready for that next step. So like I say, I started on keyboard and moved to steering wheel. It was a massive change. And then, yeah, obviously I've been with the wheel ever since. I never went back to keyboard, but yeah, go for a Thrustmaster or a Logitech, get started, get a beginner's course, and away you go. Cool. The next one comes from Saximis. What is the best way of being almost as quick in the race as in time trial? And what changes to the car do you have to make between TT and a race? That's a great question, my friend. So let's think about this for a minute. So they're 2 different cases, right? The first one is race car. So you have harder tires, more fuel in the car. That's probably and less power, engine power as well. The second case in time trial is the total opposite. Stickier tires, less fuel, more power. So everything is going to feel amazing. But you're trying to achieve 2 different results. Remember, in time trial, you're trying to go for the ultimate fastest lap. And with a race car, you're trying to make something consistent, comfortable, quick, drivable, and it's just got to be consistent and deliver consistent lap times and be something that you can drive comfortably with every single lap. So it needs to be good on fuel, good on tires, be comfortable, and all that sort of thing. The balance will probably shift between those 2 cases. So in the light fuel case, obviously everything's going to feel amazing. But when you put fuel in the car, you might find that the car goes into a lot of understeer. So you might need to put a front wing on, more front wing, or even more downforce in that condition because the car is full of fuel and it's heavy. And conversely, in the time trial, you could probably get away with less downforce. So you can take downforce off, get really good straight line speed, and the car's light and is going to feel amazing in the corners anyway. So I put more downforce on in the race spec car. With regards to tire pressures, obviously you can run higher pressures In the time trial, again, going for more straight line speed, you don't have the downside of tire wear or overheating. Whereas in the race, obviously you want to set a more comfortable tire pressure. I guess in the race, it's like I say, it's all about fuel management as well. So you can start with less fuel and do some lift and coasting. And you want to make sure you're driving for consistency. In the time trial, you're driving like you're braking at the last possible second, and it's between correct and wrong. Like you're really on that line of mistake and not mistake. Whereas in the race, you don't really want to be anywhere near that line. A mistake is going to cost you too much. So like I said earlier, you're going to be braking earlier, setting up your corner, getting clean exits, right? Driving perhaps short corners to minimize load on the front and, look after your front tires. So there's a lot of driving technique as well as setup technique that needs to be considered. Obviously, in real life, you've got gearing to worry about. So you might gear the car longer on the hot lap or TT run and run shorter gears in the race because you just don't have that top speed. So there's a lot of considerations there. I hope I've given you some ideas or some things to think about. So great question. Thank you. Okay, the last one on TikTok comes from Goose. That's a good name. He says, do you need load cell pedals to be fast? I have the Logitech G29 pedals and I can't really fit a sim rig in my room. Can I keep using the G29? Yeah, absolutely you can. Keep using the G29. Like, I don't see that load cell pedals are going to make you fast. That won't happen. Like, you're not going to plug them in and find 3/10. It just doesn't work like that. So I guess let's explain the difference between the two. So the pedals that you have versus load cell pedals, obviously the pedals that you have, they work on travel. So the more you push it down, it works on distance. So the more you push it down or release it back, it just works on that range of motion. Whereas with load cell, it's like jumping on the scales in your bathroom. There's like pressure, weight, load, essentially. So movement is not a thing. You could have the pedal totally rock hard and just be using weight. So it's a slightly different technique as well. With the travel pedals, and I've used them before, you're using your foot more and you basically fix your ankle and use your foot to cover the range. Whereas with the load cell pedal, you're using your whole leg to control the pressure. So they are different techniques. And I actually struggled the first time I went to a load cell pedal. So you might find that you're faster now because you're just used to it. So definitely changing is not going to help you. The only one thing or one potential thing that you could lose out on with a load cell pedal is the ability to configure the shape. So with my brake, for example, I've got my own brake shape. It's not linear. It's slightly higher at the top to give me more time early in the braking phase, and then it tapers off after that. So you would only be able to do that if you had load cell pedals and the software to map in that shape. That's potentially the only thing you're missing out on. It's not a big deal. Keep running with what you have. Yeah, good luck. All the best. Okay, moving platforms. We're going to jump to Instagram now. And my girlfriend, Erica, has asked the first question. So thank you, Erica, for supporting the channel. It says, hi, Martin. What are some of the most challenging aspects of sim racing, both from a technical and mental perspective? Thank you, Erica. Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. I'm wood. Okay, some most challenging aspects of sim racing from technical and mental perspective. Good question. So the thing with the sim compared to real life is you can't feel the car in the sim. So you use your eyes a lot more. So obviously in a real car, you feel every bump. You feel it through your back and your hips and your legs. You feel oversteer. You feel sliding. You feel all of these things. In a way, you have another element. You have another piece of information coming your way that makes it easier to drive because you've got additional information in the way of feeling that we don't have here. We do have feeling through the steering wheel, but for me, I've always relied on my eyes. Even in real life racing, I use my eyes because I see things before I feel them. So if I see oversteer, I'll react to the visual before I'll react to the feeling. So I guess the difference, the most challenging aspect of sim is that you don't have that feeling anymore, but you've got your eyes and I can see understeer or oversteer. I'll just see the front sliding or I'll see the rear sliding and I'll see relative to the apex and the curb. I'll see what's happening before anything else. So that's probably the most challenging aspect, is that you've lost that feeling and you need to use your other senses more. So the sight, the hearing, and what's happening through the wheel, they need to come up. You need to use them more. So that's probably from a technical standpoint. From a mental standpoint, I would argue the opposite. I would say it's probably harder in real life because you have all of that other stuff we just spoke about. So you've got the bumps, you've got the feeling, you can hear the engine, you've got all of that, and that just drains your capacity. You've also got more buttons and more to worry about. You've got more engine modes and you've got more options and you've got more brake tools. So from a mental standpoint, it's much harder in real life because there's just so much more going on and you're at what we call full capacity, full mental capacity, which is where there's just so much going on. You don't know what to do next. And you actually forget where to brake and how to drive and timing your shifts and all of the basics because you've got the noise and all the other stuff to worry about. So from a mental standpoint, it's probably easier here. But from a technical standpoint, I think not having the feeling actually makes you a slightly more a sensitive driver, because you've got less input. As I say, you need to be more sensitive. So great question. Thank you for asking. Thank you for supporting the channel. Okay, the next one comes from Lorenko, also on Instagram. When is the right time to start playing with the brake bias and differential settings? That's a good question. I've studied about them and what they can do to the car, but I haven't decided if it's better to keep focusing on mastering corners or by changing or changing the setup. Okay, I understand your question. You're saying, when is the right time to start playing around with brake balance and diff settings? Okay, well, probably one way of answering this question is saying, just do it. Like, just start playing around with those things and see how you get on. That's really the only way to learn them, isn't it? Like, you got to make a start. If you're waiting for the perfect lap or the perfect lap time or to perfectly understand corners before you take that next step, there is no perfect time. Now is the perfect time. Next time you go out on track, start pushing the brake balance forward or backwards and see what happens. See what response you get and see if that helps your understanding as well. Let's say you push the brake balance rearwards and you brake and the rear steps out. Ask yourself, well, why did that happen? Okay, and I push it forward and I locked up the fronts. Okay, why did that happen? Okay, when you know why it happened, when would it be useful? In which situations would it be useful? So you start to ask yourself these questions as you go through. The same with the diff. Obviously, if you lock it up a little bit more and go through a corner and the next lap open it and go through a corner, just see the difference and don't be afraid to try and learn, because that's the only way you'll take that step. Once you've tried and failed and fallen and learnt from it, you're stronger and you're better. And so I encourage you to just jump in and dive in. Start playing with those two things. They're great tools to start playing with, the brake bias and the differential settings. And you mentioned here, should I keep focusing on mastering corners? Corners is a big one. There's technical corners. You know about my corners course, which is chicanes, hairpins, S's, constant radius, double apex, and so on. These are really technical corners, and I encourage you to see as many corner types as possible so that when you go to a new track, you've seen all these corners before in one way or another, and you've got a rough idea how to take them already. But like I say, I encourage you to just start playing with the tools, man. Like start playing and let me know how you get on. Yeah, send me a message. Both of those are covered in my intermediate course as well. So thank you for your questions. Good question. Okay, we got a couple of DMs here from anonymous users. So 2 DMs, direct messages. I'm going to read out the first one. So it says, hey Martin, I've seen you training on your stories and I wondered, what is your diet and gym routine? Okay, that's a good question. Different one. When I was younger, I used to do more like long distance running and cycling. So like hour on the bike, hour run, 12-kilometer run and so on. Then my knee started getting sore, eventually went to knee surgery. And just growing up, having less and less time, I can't afford to do those hour-long sessions, hour-long runs, and spend hours doing, cardio. So I looked into it a bit more, and I looked into high-intensity interval training. If you know about this, it's basically short bursts where you get the heart rate up, and you can do what you can cover in an hour doing steady-state cardio. You could probably cover in 20 minutes doing high-intensity interval training. So that's things like burpees, sprints, all body weight stuff, lunges, push-ups, pull-ups, squats, sit-ups. Did I say push-ups? Yeah, push-ups. All of those variations as well, a lot of core exercises as well. And I like to do it outside. I like to take the sun. Here in Australia, we're very lucky. We've got plenty of good sunshine and it's safe. So where possible, I like to go outside, and I'm not a huge gym, like I'm not really into gym that much. So obviously when I was racing, I was training the neck a lot. So I would put the helmet on and do a lot of neck exercises. That's probably the only thing that I would have to do in addition to what I'm doing right now in order to race. So the neck is very important and the forearms are very important as well because you hold on so tightly. So that's my gym routine, a lot of high intensity and a lot of body weight. I think it's called calisthenics exercises. So just body weight. There's nothing formal to it. I just do it whenever I have time. Go to the local park, find some bars or some trees or some rocks and make do with what I have. We've got some stairs as well, so I do some sprints up and down the stairs. And yeah, like I say, just do what I can. Regarding diet, the second part of your question, I try to firstly avoid all of the rubbish, and there is a lot, unfortunately. So that's sugars and refined carbohydrates. So that's no chips, chocolates, cookies, cakes, biscuits, donuts, white breads, white rices are all forever cut, like completely cut. And so I pretty much eat what's left. I think it's also important that you turn things around and read the ingredients. For example, in the yogurt space, you might have one yogurt that's just milk and cultures, and you might have another yogurt that's bean extract, thickeners, food colorings, gums, sweeteners, acidity regulators, preservatives. You're going to get these two products. I encourage you to turn them around and have a look and see which one is, which one has the least ingredients and just a more natural option. So it leaves me with all fruits, all vegetables, meats, dairies, and I like brown sourdough rye bread as well. So yeah, I like wholemeal pasta as well. And I have that with sauce, red sauce, veggies, fruits, and meats as well. Not too much seafood for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. I just don't have it too much. But I will eat it from time to time as well. So in the morning, I also have berries with nuts and yogurt, just something simple. And like I say, for lunch, it'll just be either salad, vegetables, steak, or a small portion of pasta. That's about it. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, the last one is also a DM, an anonymous DM. It says, "Hey Martin, I just got your corners course and I'm finding it super helpful. I never looked at corners this way before, and I was wondering what prompted you to make this course. Thanks and greetings from Netherlands." Oh, thank you so much for your question. Yeah, so I guess I've seen so many different corner types over time, and no one has categorized them in this way. Like we talk about fast left, fast right hander, slow left, slow right, but no one says like, are you good in hairpins? Are you good in chicanes? Are you good in double apex corners? Like these are corners that we routinely have to take and routinely come across. And it's just helpful if you've done your homework beforehand so you know what to expect in that type of corner. So I've always liked chicanes and been confident and strong in chicanes. So if you look at tracks like Imola in Canada and Monza, they're pretty much all chicanes. And so if you're weak in chicanes, you're going to be in trouble on those tracks, just, by way of extension. So I put together that course because I was strong in chicanes and I always liked chicanes. And I thought to myself, well, what makes me strong in chicanes? Is it the way I break into them or the exit I get or the speed I carry? What is it about chicanes that, makes me strong there? And if it's that, then how can I be strong in hairpins? How can I be strong in S's or double apex corners or decreasing radius? Decreasing radius corners are really a big one because they're new. Like when Bahrain and China and Malaysia came out, those tracks where you're braking, turning, downshifting all in one go, those decreasing radius corners really require a special trail braking technique and a special line as well into those corners. So it prompted me to make this course because we don't have one. And it's just so helpful before you go to a new track, have a look and see what you got. For example, if you're going to Monza, you'll be like, okay, I've got first chicane, second chicane, Lesmos 1 and 2, Ascari chicane, and Parabolica. So you've got 3 chicanes and the Parabolica, which is increasing radius. So you know straight away where to focus, how to set up the car. Like chicanes, riding the curbs is a lot of it. So you know to set up your car soft to ride those chicanes really well. And you know that in the last corner, the Parabolica, you're going to need good traction. That's the most important thing in increasing radius corners. So it just really drives your direction of setup and driving really well. And it gives you something to focus on as well. So like I said, you go to that track and you're prepared straight away. Like we've already just discussed how you would prepare for a track like Monza, given that it's got chicanes and increasing radius corners. So I hope that helps you. I hope that answers your question. So thank you so much, everyone. That's all of the questions. I did say I was going to give a coaching to the best question, and I think there's 2 actually. So Hawk, your question was, what would you say the must-have tips and techniques for racing? I liked your question because it was so open-ended, and I had to choose between the mental side, the braking, the racing line, the consistency, the wet weather. There's so many things. So great question. And Saximi's, what's the best way of being almost as quick in the race as in time trial? So comparing and contrasting 2 very different cars and very different driving styles. Also a great question. So let's do a group coaching session between the 2 of you and me. So guys, send me an email, martin@lowerlaptime.com. We'll schedule a session together and maybe we can focus on those 2 questions and go a little bit deeper into them as well. So I hope this video helped you and you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your questions, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm excited to tell you about something I've been working on. A new course to teach you not just how to drive, but how to be a driver. It took me 20 years to learn this sport, and I'm going to teach you everything I know through LowerLaptime. It's my ultimate driving course. I want to teach you my method and my mindset to compete at the very highest level in both sim racing and open wheel track racing. Touch, touch, touch. And with this method, you'll be absolutely shocked how much fuel you can save for such a minimal lap time loss. So don't miss out on the chance to work with me and take your driving game to a whole new level. Visit www.lowerlaptime.com to learn more.